I'm going to try my best to keep this 95% fun, 5% tears. What I've decided.
I have Kleenex in my purse.
Pass now.
That's my way of combating that. I'd like Jeff to stand up. Jeff, stand up, and Dan Taylor, stand up. All right, these are the two biggest guys here, right? Friends of Phil's. And so, if anybody excessively cries, I want you to physically go get them and rub their face in the potato sack. Done. Let's do it now. In fact, screw it. Just bring the bowl up. Yeah, let's do it right now.
I thought they were like the official hugs.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. They're huggy bears. So, my first story actually goes well before this, and it starts when I was either 15 or 16 in Chicago, and I was, typical 15, 16-year-old getting ready to go to school, and, rushing through breakfast, and I'm on my way, and my mom says, honey, hold on a second, I want to tell you something. I'm like, what, Mom? Yeah. And she says, you're going to have a baby brother or a baby sister. This is obviously well before ultrasounds. And I remember saying, well, how's that possible? And I don't think it was that I was naive in the ways of the birds and the bees. It's just that how could have 16 years, no sibling, and all of a sudden a sibling, right?
She was probably surprised too.
That's what I found out later. Yeah, it was a surprise for them. And, let's face it, by the time he was born November 30th, 1966. And by that time, I could care less. I mean, would a 16-year-old boy want a baby brother? I'm assuming all of you.
Was it the acid or?
Well, so
We're laughing, man. 95%
yeah.
laughing.
There you go. Say 95. Roll out. So, anyways, my mom later in life told me that I was very good with him, which I can't believe.
Me neither.
Yeah. But so I'll just, and again, you're going to see these more, but this is him as a little kid. He's cute there.
Yeah.
He's a model.
He was always cute. Except the ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
So said the ex-girlfriend, right?
Now,
He was always cute.
he was on the Shabona Park football team, the Bears it was called, and that's the Bears uniform, number 45. Look how tiny he is. And, he kind of grew and became a bigger guy. Well, you're going to get a kick out of this. So there he is, yeah. I bet that football went about 3 yards. And, any football player with a poodle, you kind of defeat the purpose. Check this. There he is in the middle. He was the center of the offensive line. Look at all the guys around him. He got murdered. And from what I understand, he only played about a year, and understandably so. I don't think he liked it all that much. So this is just, so I've kind of got these grouped, and again, I'll explain these later. That was, by the way, that was our cousin Jill. That's a girl, not me.
No, the other
Oh, no, okay. I thought he asked that was me. All right, so this is Phil's best friend growing up, another Phil Malinowski. I'm going to close my part of this today with something that Phil wrote me that it just struck me that it's very inspirational, and I think it'll make you feel better about what's happened. That was, and kind of come back to this a little bit. That's me on the right.
You look old.
Really?
I know. Well, I'm supposed to
Really
look
old.
old. I was in a play, and this play planted the seed for Phil for a story that I'll tell a little later. Now, here's the first real story. It looks like high school graduation, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of a sham. It's before Photoshop. But here's the story. So this would have been, I don't know, early 80s, I guess. And I was living in Grand Junction at the time, flew to Chicago for his graduation, as did a lot of relatives and family members. And the night before, so this was a Saturday afternoon, this was like an outdoor stadium. It'd be like Fiddler's Green is here. It's called Poplar Creek. And it was at 1 o'clock. So the night before, my mom and Phil and I are sitting around the table and we're making plans for the next morning. And Phil says, actually, Mom, I can't do that tomorrow morning. And my mom's, well, why not? You know, I think we're all going to go out for breakfast. And he said, well, I have to take a makeup test. And we said, a makeup test? Well, who cares? You know, you graduate. He said, no, if I don't pass this test, I don't graduate. Because I actually failed whatever the class was. Yeah. And of course, imagine my mom's reaction. And so, what they told him was, you can go ahead and you can go through the ceremony. And you see those like cardboard things? So they said, if you pass that test, you'll have a diploma in there. If not, you'll still just come up, you'll shake hands, you'll get the cardboard, so that, you know.
So he doesn't know until he walks off the stage.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
No one knows. We're all sitting way up there somewhere. We're holding hands. Oh, Lord, please, please. He gets that. There's the handshake, right? He starts walking off the stage. Kind of walks like this. He goes like this with the cardboard thing, and he goes, yes! So he made it. There we are there, and wow. You know, I tried to Photoshop myself out because I'm a little dorky there, but you know, not too bad. And those were neighbors. Phil had a crush on the woman on the right. That's the mom of the girl.
Sounds like Phil.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a shot. Yeah. See that? One of his buddies. That was his high school graduation picture. Now you're going to start seeing ex-girlfriends, right? This was Lori. I remember her.
We all end up in the same picture.
This was Trish. We'll come back to Trish. I don't know who this was. This is like the third prom. I think he took 3 girls to the same prom. And like we changed the tux. He looks like a piano prodigy there, doesn't he? Yeah. Now playing Chopin Nocturne. I don't know if he's got like a cake in there or what. It's a corsage.
Wow.
Yeah, another prom. That was Trish again. This was Lori again. That was Trish again. I have no idea who this was. I have no idea who that was.
That's a good
Woman on the right's feeling good.
Yeah, they look happy, don't they? I think I know why they weren't together.
Don't put your throat down, Jack.
Look at Phil and Mike, that's my dad. They were hod carriers that day, you know. I'm sure Phil was. Look at my dad's not even dirty. So now, this triggers the story of after high school graduation. I bet very, very few of you know this. Phil went to MIT. Did you know that?
Michigan Institute of
Morrison, Illinois Institute of Technology. Massachusetts Institute. Not that MIT. Boy, Mary, you know. So, it was like mostly drafting classes, but it was the first time Phil was away. And so, I don't think made it through the year because without my mom there, he went a little crazy.
How old was he there?
There's your answer.
Well,
He started Bush back then?
Until he finished, and then he left.
He never stopped.
That was his kitchen.
you need more banquets in that picture. Oh. Words your fingers under gloves.
Yeah, I don't.
That's where the beer went.
I think it was his splash dance.
Airsoft in the back.
So he only lasted, I think, 1 or 2 semesters. Went back to Chicago. He had odd jobs for a year or so, and that wasn't actually a job. I think he was working at a car dealership, and they did some sort of a picnic that day. But I like the picture of him.
It's a hell of a picnic.
Yeah, and with our parents.
Nice.
Yeah, holding our mom's hand. That was cute. Oh, so okay. So Phil was really good. Really up until a couple of years ago. He would, that too. But he was really good about writing on the back of a photograph the whole story of it, right? And so,
a lot of women, you gotta have visual.
well, well, then you'll appreciate this, Mary. So this says where he is. He's somewhere, I think, in Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. And you have great detail about that. And at the very bottom, it says, girl unknown. That's cheers. Girls unknown. Okay. Just some pictures of him during this era. Now, this starts an era that was not a good point for Phil. He moved to Florida, really to follow this young lady, her name Trish, who'd seen there earlier.
How do you remember all these names?
I've reconnected with Trish. Yeah. And so, and he wrote it on the back. Exactly. They're all written on the back.
There's my phone number.
Trish still lives in Florida, and actually, she wanted to send a bunch of stuff. She had to evacuate, obviously. And things did not go well. It was a difficult time for Phil. I think it's when we first realized he suffered from depression, and he acted out on it, unfortunately, down there. This was his apartment down there. That's how I found it when I went down there. But he had fun, and he had friends. Is that karaoke or just so? Who knows? Who knows what video that's from? He wrote it on the back, and I remember this video. No? Gosh, 80s group. We got some 80s people here.
Oh my gosh, wait, it took my time.
Where's Tab?
That's Duran Duran.
Duran Duran.
Well, close. Van Halen.
Breakfast.
Hot teacher.
Oh,
Yeah. And he's still there in Tallahassee is where he lived with his friends. And my mom came down there, and it kind of looks like Donald Trump there, doesn't it?
He cleaned up well.
Yeah, I doubt Trump has that body now. Oh, by the way, that was our grandmother. She was sweet. When he moved to Florida, he didn't tell my parents. And he stopped at my grandmother's place and told her and said, I'm leaving. So, because he knew my parents would talk him out of it. And that's our dad. That's our cousin Mickey. I think he was that's our cousin Jill in the back. Remember that shot earlier where they were kind of hugging? She got married in Connecticut. They're from Hartford, Connecticut.
What kind of car is that? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Hey, is there somebody here that looks like the guy on the far left? Eddie.
wow, look at you, Eddie.
Look at this. Eddie looks the same to me. I haven't seen Eddie in like 15 years, and these guys were so close.
Still got the truck
But
around?
that's a grease lightning kind
No.
of.
That was the customer's car.
Truth comes out, Mr. Esparza. All right. Hey, who is that on? Is that Jimmy?
No, that was Greg.
Okay. And so again from there, look at that. Yeah. Patrick Swayze.
Yes,
She was saying that earlier.
Oh, there's that damn Toyota.
I know.
Now,
Over 3 times.
Exactly.
I think I was in one of those.
Oh my gosh.
My all-time favorite story of time I had with my brother is this. And actually, here's what I'm gonna do. Without comment, and then I'm gonna come back. So these go kind of in a row. This is, we're in Hartford, Connecticut, right? Okay,
You were a dork.
I was.
Maybe Paul.
Hey, where's Jeff and Dan?
Yeah.
What is that? All right, so what this was, so my mom tells Phil one day that our Aunt Lou, who's my mom's sister from Hartford, has called and said, Aunt Lou wants to give you a camper they have, because he'd wanted a camper. And it's a pop-up camper, and she says it's in great shape, and all you have to do is just drive out there and get it. Do you see that piece of shit? I mean, that. So what Phil and I decided to do is Phil drove out there, and I said, I don't want to drive out there, but I'll drive back with you. So I flew out there a few days later. I get to Hartford, get to their house, and visit with my aunt and uncle, and they go to bed, and Phil says, well, I'll clean up the language of what he said, but something about, you won't believe this. And he said, I opened this thing up. First of all, it's made of Swiss cheese, the canvas, as you put it up. And he said, second of all, 1,000 spiders crawled out. Now, I don't know if you know, Phil had
spiders.
deathly fears. Spiders and heights, mostly spiders. And so he said, we can't take this back. And I said, Phil, we have to take it back. We got no choice. So this shot back here was actually sent by my Aunt Lou. We went to breakfast the last morning, and we pretended we were really excited. And we drove, and we can see we're waving, and we got a block away, and we're like, should we leave it here? We said, no, they'll find it, Okay. So we drove on through upstate New York, carrying that stupid thing, drove to the Pennsylvania Turnpike. I'll never forget, we came to a rest stop, and it's in, I'll say this town wrong, Wilkes Bar or something like that. And we stopped at the rest stop. And Phil got quiet, and I got quiet. We were just kind of looking out. And I said, are you thinking what I'm thinking? We were at the crest of a hill. And he said, yes.
Oh, boy.
And just hold the pin. Back it up, take it off, and let it go. Free Willy, right? At the last second, and I mean the last second, I think we had it off.
Yeah.
We thought it might have a mind of its own, and if it veers off to the left, it's going to take out 3 or 4 houses, small subdivision, because we were way up. So okay, so we put it back on, and we kept driving. And we spent that night at a rest stop, or actually at a gas station, sleeping in the truck in Cleveland, Ohio. And it was about 20 degrees out, froze like I never have before. Next morning, oh yeah, I have to back up a little. So we had a planned stop in the middle, and it was in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We had a cousin who had a bed and breakfast there, our cousin Larry, and he was getting married that weekend. So that was part of the whole reason of why I flew out there, so we could time it to come back, go to the wedding, be a great time, etc. So we get to McHenry, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago, and I have an old college friend there, and I had contacted him and said, "Hey Gary, can we stop by?" You know, he says, "Well, I'm going to be in Mexico that week. Shoot, you know, just my son Ryan will be there," and I knew Ryan was like about 16 years old. So on the way to Lake Geneva is McHenry, and we drive through, and I tell Phil this story, and I said, "Hey, but I have an idea. Well, let's go to Gary's house, knowing only his son is there. Let's tell him we're roofers. And we have, you know, that looks like the old tar that you would mix it in." So we show up to the house, and of course Ryan is there, and you know, we haven't bathed or anything in days. We smell bad. We look like roofers. Yeah. I hope nobody's a roofer. And we show up.
What an asshole.
And Ryan answers the door, and we're like, "Yeah, we're here to do the roof." And he's like, "What? I don't know about." So, "Well, you know, that's my dad." "Well, call your dad." "Well, he's in Mexico." And this is before cell phones. Yeah. "I don't know how to." And where Phil goes, "We're unions, buddy. You gotta do it.
Wow.
You're paying us no matter what." And the poor kid, you know. So finally we leave, and we're just rolling with laughter. We get about 5 miles away to the next town. Oh, and I can't remember it. But anyways, it's a really small town. And you know, it's one of those like just one stoplight, and that was even a stop sign. But they were having their fall school parade that day. And we made a right-hand turn, and we were accidentally in the parade. We're in that thing. That's our float. And we're waving to everybody. We go about 20 miles down the road. We get to Lake Geneva finally, and we pull into, and our cousin Larry had this beautiful Victorian bed and breakfast. It was gorgeous. And he had renovated it, and we pull in, and his fiancée, who was, you know, he was marrying the next day, her name was Penny Jo. Phil and I, being from Colorado, used to call her Penejo. We didn't like her. Because she saw us pull up. And we parked in their parking lot of this extremely high-end Victorian bed and breakfast. And we get out, like, you know, bums. And she tried to be nice, but she said, "You know what? I'm going to have you park across the street at the restaurant. That's where we're having the wedding reception, and so that'll work out perfectly." And so we're like, "Okay." So we go across the street, we park it there, we unhook it, we go to our hotel. We were not allowed at the B&B, obviously. And you know, the wedding's the next day, the reception very nice, etc. And then the day after that, Phil and I leave to head back to Colorado. Well, we go to get that, and it's open. And it's been used as a dumpster by the restaurant. It's loaded with food that's been thrown out.
Oh.
It was horrible. We had to throw all that crap out. And then finally we get back in, and we head back to Colorado, etc.
That was your out.
So, it should have been the out. But, you know, at that point it was like, we made it this far, damn it, we're taking this back. So we get back. I go home. Phil was living at my parents' house at the time, and so he tells my mom the whole story, and she sees it. And by the way, that's a 1954 model. I forget who makes that. Apparently well known. It was probably nice in 1954, but this was like 1995. So it's a little old. And so, so Phil tells my mom this, and he says, "I've got to get rid of it. I've got to take it to a junkyard," and, you know. So he calls me the next day. My mom agreed, you know, and she said, "All right, we'll tell him, thank you," you know, and we pretended until my Aunt Lou died that we loved it. We were camping all the time. So Phil calls me the next day and he said, well, it's gone. Took it to the junkyard. And I said, well, how'd you do? And he said, I only got, he said $75. I said, well, that's not much, but okay, at least that bought us gas money. He said, no. When, you know, it's one of those once in a lifetime experiences, right?
Good story, Paul.
Thank you. So here's some from like about the 90s. Does they look good there? I call this his James Cowboy phase.
That's John Travolta in.
Yeah, urban, what's that called? Urban
Cowboys.
Yeah.
Like it in that portion.
He cleaned up nice, didn't he?
You always cleaned up nice.
Nice.
Yeah, he good looking. He got the looks.
It's always a mixed up world.
Now, this, right, starts the other best part that I remember of film is, and this went over several years. Remember I showed you the picture of me in a play, it was back in Grand Junction, I was a little kid. I got involved with my friend Vivian, my friend Mark, who's over there, and we started doing some theater here in Englewood. In fact, we started the Englewood Community Theater. And I was, which is no longer in existence because we were horrible. But
You might have been, but Mark might.
oh no.
Acting.
So I got to direct the very first play. It was called While the Lights Were Out. And you know, Phil kind of liked it, but you know, he didn't want to be in it. He thought he had to turn in his man card, you know. The guy with the gay cowboy hat. Right? So I said, fine. So about halfway through though, we had to build sets. And you know, in plays they call them flats, and they're what you see in the background, and you're usually stretched canvas on 2x4s, etc. And I said, man, you'd be great at that, Phil. Could you help me do that? And he said, well, all right, let me come take a look. So he goes to rehearsal and pulls me off to the side somewhere during the rehearsal with a pretty large cast. That play had probably, I don't know, 14, 15 of us at least. And half of them were women, and all of them were very good looking. Right. So Phil all of a sudden decided he loved the theater.
And one of them showed up in a negligee.
That was actually in the play.
It was in the play, yes.
And
That's why that play was chosen.
so, anyways, he does that, but. And a good friend of mine was not able to make it today, Orion, also from that first play. He had one of the male lead. In fact, I think he had the male lead. And he came up to me at one of the rehearsals, and Phil was doing a great job on this. And he calls me over, pulls me over the side, and he said, I'm really concerned about Phil. And I'm like, oh shit, now what, you know? And I've never heard that before. Sorry, buddy. You should have gone first. We do the 95%. 96 I'm at, right. So anyways, I said, why? What's wrong? And he said, your brother just asked me if those flats should be painted pink or mauve. And he said, has your brother ever used those two words in the same sentence, or either word?
Yes.
And
Oh, gosh.
while I was putting together this, I found his original drawings of this, and at the top it says pink or mauve.
Wow.
Cool. Yeah, isn't that cool? There really is. Phil became a natural. The next play my friend Orion directed cast him in the male lead.
He was fabulous.
And you had the female.
I did.
Yes.
But he was fabulous.
He was
He was
incredible.
a natural.
He was incredible. It was a Noel Coward play called Life Spirit. He was unbelievable.
No, that's the one in the negligee.
Yeah, not right there, but yeah. So here's some pictures of him during the plays, right? And I'm going to tell you about this one.
Got some grease.
A little bit.
I'm sure you've all heard of either the play, the TV show, or the movie The Odd Couple. Right? All right, so actually my friend Orion and I were Felix and Oscar. I was Felix. And if you remember the play, there's these card players, and like I think it's 3 or 4 guys, and they're kind of secondary characters, but very important, obviously, to the play. Phil was one of the card players, and he was the guy who was kind of a nerd, right? And guess what? All of those clothes are my dad's. Seriously. He went into my dad's closet, and my dad was so proud. He had no idea that they were.
It looks so good.
So, yeah, that it would look so good.
He's talking to you, Phil.
So, yeah.
He owned that character.
But here's the story. Here's the story of this. So at this play, so I've always, all the theater groups I've been involved with have this thing, and I don't know how many theater groups do this, but we carried the tradition on. Closing night, you do something to mess up the other actors. The key is you have to be in character. You know, you really shouldn't be making up lines. Usually with props, you do something, right? So, in the play, Felix makes sandwiches for the card players. And he comes back out, and I had Kendall did our props, and she would make me a tuna sandwich every night, and I'd bring that out and serve it to the boys. So, the last night, I decided, let's take that tuna sandwich and let's add peanut butter, honey, horseradish, on and on and on, you name it. Whatever, I mean, as long as it wasn't, you know, like Clorox. But it would have been horrible, just horrible. So, in the play, I come out, the boys are playing, I serve it to his character, and his line, he's supposed to take a bite and goes, "These are delicious, Felix." He takes the bite, doesn't miss a beat. "This is delicious, Felix," and he finishes the sandwich.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pushes.
I have no idea how he did
You
that.
probably didn't notice, Paul.
Hey, yeah, I probably didn't notice. You're right. You're right.
That's good.
The last part of the play stuff here is we kind of culminated our group with a play that I got to write. It was something I'd always wanted. It was an idea I had, and I finished it in time for my 50th birthday. I treated myself. I got the old group back together. By then, we'd been disbanded for a few years. And I wrote the end of the play with him and I at a house in Uray. You know where Uray is, you know? And I was actually working for a nonprofit at the time, and the president had this beautiful, he's actually, remember the old Urban Lights? He was the owner of that. So he allowed me to go there sometimes. So I took Phil with me. And I told him, I want to finish this play, and I can't quite get the ending right. He and I stayed up till like, I don't know, 2, 3 in the morning. We wrote the thing together, the ending. And I'd written a part in the play specifically for him. It was a minor part, except that he has the last lines in the play, and basically the whole moral of the story is told by him. He played a character named Vito, and it takes place in a restaurant in Chicago. He is Vito, the waiter from hell. And was he good? Oh my God. Vivian was in that. In fact, Vivian and Mark were the male and female lead in that play.
I played Paul.
Sort of, was based on a true story.
Do you guys have recordings of those
You know, it's not a good recording. Yeah, I paid a guy to record it,
Yeah.
and you can barely hear the sound.
It's on VHS.
I don't,
Well,
that's gonna be
we
tough.
should, yeah.
I
we have a
have
beta
a,
Maybe
player.
put
I
it to
have a
this sometime.
copy.
Okay.
Wow.
Sorry.
You know, someday we'll see if
Sorry
we
to
can get that. Well, no,
You can sell
that's a
tickets.
good question. Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
So,
You could just reproduce it.
Yeah.
Not without
Somebody
Phil.
like,
You
Phil
won't
dyed his
have,
hair.
you won't have
Grew a
Vito.
mustache. He dyed his mustache.
I know what you mean.
Wow.
That's him.
Whoa.
Put it in the distance.
Captain Jack.
We were trying to get Richie here. We've had a hard time locating him. This is during that era, as you can tell. Oh, so after our play, and I bet very few of you know this, Phil did comedy improv for quite a while, and he was really, really good. I mean, super good. And it was called the Comedy Jocks, and they used to be at some nightclub like in Lakewood, I think. I don't know, but they were based out of a place, and the Denver Broncos showed up one night, and of course they flocked to Phil. This is about that time we went back to Chicago. You miss up there, it says Riggio's. That was the name of the character in the play. That was also I named it after my grandfather, Mickey Riggio. And we were driving around in Chicago and saw this and took pictures. It was really fun. That's the house Phil grew up in. I was already a junior in high. We had to move because we only lived in a 2-bedroom house. It was about 600 square feet. And because we had this newborn coming along, my parents bought, it was still a 2-bedroom house, but up there on top, they converted that to a bedroom, and I got to stay up there. And here's some shots from around that era. He had a condo, and I know some of you.
Somebody else
we
lived there.
already talked about the tree.
Yeah.
1 year. I only remember Phil getting excited about Christmas 1 year. He went out
Hot Wheels.
and he got this, yes,
Yes.
he got this has got to be what, 20 feet tall?
Yeah.
And he's up there, he decorated it with Hot Wheels.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we're trying to look, American Gothic. God, I look dorky there. Skip that one.
No, go back.
That's our mom. The little girl on the right, and I was hoping she'd be here, but she's not, is his daughter, Isabella, and her mother, Angela. And that's Phil with Isabella, which is really sweet. And the brother, who was not Phil, but and our cousin, Mickey, when we had her. And family friend of ours. And again, that's me, our cousin, and Phil. That was my mother passed away, and that's where we all were, at the house. And I think that had major effect on Phil, and I think he never really recovered from that. He was sweet with my daughter. That's my daughter, special needs. That's my uncle Doug in there. We took some great trips in his 4-wheel up to the mountains, and great shot of us up there. Great shot of him. He was scary to drive with. And his email address is rollover3T.
Yes.
You never raced RC cars with them. Okay?
Alright.
The crowd? Yeah. Okay.
You would share that with
He
me.
would smash you into the wall.
Well, that's what I wrote in the.
These last.
Wasn't on purpose.
No, accidents happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
A lot.
These last group is from when he worked at our company, Pillar, and he's got a table full there. You guys know who that is. We were in Durango. We had just taken over. It looks like a big backdrop, doesn't it? But I know. But we had a condo that first time.
Where's your shirt?
Yeah, I like the tattoo.
Yeah.
I went with him when he got that one.
We were known for our.
White hammered.
No.
We'll do some sharing. This is our famous pillar Christmas parties. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
can you tell what that is?
Those are like balls.
The boobs.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
Stress boots.
Stress boots.
I don't know what that was. But that was pretty. Yeah, forget bed bugs. And that one, I pulled his name for Santa one year, and I got Phil the Alien.
Aw.
This one I'll ask Jeff to
Yeah.
tell that story. And the last one, so the last one is not him, but this, some of you on Facebook have seen this. This is one of my shots. This is the last time, okay, here's the 5%. This is the last time I was ever with him. And he and I had this bizarre, I was thinking about this the other day. We have this bizarre fascination with Highway 285. I don't know why. If you know, like in Denver, 285 is Hampton, and then it goes way west. He had this fascination with from Bailey to Fairplay. I have this fascination with 285 from Fairplay down to the New Mexico border. So we had talked for ages about getting together and doing a loop, right? And driving and taking photos. He always wanted to come with me and do a photo shoot with me. So we were talking about this on a Friday. We always called each other Friday nights. And I said, you know what? Let's do it Sunday. Let's do it Sunday. Well, I got this, I got that. I probably had to do something for you then, right? But he said, you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. We had to bet, you know, I'm so thankful that the last time I was with him was a full day. I mean, from 8 in the morning till 7 in the evening. He took me to that waterfall, which I didn't know existed. It's near Turial Reservoir, and it's off the side of it. I saw this guy fishing. I took that picture, and I wrote it.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't let him. He's here. The last time I talked to him was like the Friday before he passed away. And, you know, it was interesting. And I think a lot of you have mentioned this. He was really at a transition, I think. He had, and he wanted to shed himself of material things. But he wanted to reconnect, and had been in this phase of reconnecting with people. And some of you are here only because he had reconnected with you, like within the last year or so. He has friends out of town that he reconnected with. He wanted to look at doing something different going forward. He had this dream of getting an RV and, you know, just living out of the RV. I think he really wanted to sort of downsize, if you will, and get rid of responsibility. Not totally get rid of responsibilities, because we all know Phil is very responsible. But, you know, he hits that transition phase, and I'm just going to assume he's in that transition phase. And so that's where I want to close my part with a story that Phil Malinowski, who you saw earlier, sent me last night. This is great. So the other story, because I'm not going to tell the first story. So the other story is of Phil and I growing up, and how much fun we had just getting together and making each other laugh. We would be at one of our houses, sneak some beer, sometimes a cigar, and just go back and forth reciting Monty Python lines in our best English accents. No matter how many times we did it, we would just crack each other up. That was the greatest part of our friendship, the ability to make each other laugh no matter what. And I had that with Phil too. This continued as we grew up. Then we went our separate ways. But it took just one phone call, and it was like we were kids again doing Monty Python. One of our favorite scenes was that from the Holy Grail? Remember this? Was Arthur meeting the Black Knight, who wouldn't admit defeat no matter how many limbs Arthur cut from him. Remember this scene?
Yes.
It was all comedy with fake squirting blood and fake body parts, and we loved it. One line the Black Knight said when Arthur cut off his second arm was our favorite. "It's a flesh wound." Arthur responded, "A flesh wound? I cut your arms off." This would absolutely have us in tears every time we said it. This is what I think about when I think of Phil. It's just a flesh wound. You can't kill Phil's spirit, heart, or soul. Get that potato salad. They will always live in me, and all of us he touched. He brought so much joy and fun to others. He will always be my best friend, and I love him. I think somewhere he's saying to me, "It's just a flesh wound," and cracking up. And I totally agree, And you know, if you know what happened to him, let it be a footnote, and no more than a footnote. Remember these chapters of his life and how you helped me. Okay, Jeff, put your head in this. And you know, if there's one fabulous thing that's happened with this, they say when one door closes, others open, and tons of doors have opened up.